I never imagined the struggle of working 12 hours for just one a day during the Gilded Age, the clanging of machinery, the thick air choked with sweat and dirt. It all felt like a nightmare come to life. I still hear the screams of children, voices lost amidst the grinding gears. I thought I knew hardship, but nothing prepared me for this. My hands trembled at the thought of another brutal day ahead. Each morning brought the same dark ritual, rising before dawn, my stomach twisting with hunger, clutching a scrap of bread as if it were gold. The sun was a cruel, fiery overseer, heating the factory to a suffocating embrace. The walls closed in, each breath was heavy, as if the air itself carried the weight of despair. That I looked around me, my fellow workers were ghosts. Their eyes dull, faces lined with exhaustion. They were all fighting their own battles, just trying to survive another day in this relentless grind. Mary, a girl no older than 12, worked next to me, her tiny hands working faster than I thought humanly possible. Her laugh once rang through the factory, but it had faded, lost like a forgotten tune in a bustling city. I felt a pang in my chest, wishing I could shield her from this fate. Why did we do this? What drove us to the brink? Was it hope, or were we just trapped in an endless cycle of despair? Each whistle signaling the end of a shift brought momentary relief, but it was fleeting, like grasping at smoke. I could feel the invisible chains binding us tighter with every passing hour, and then, one day, something happened. I stumbled upon a hidden letter, a plea for help buried under the cold floorboards. It spoke of a way out, a secret promise of better things. I felt my heart race, a flicker of hope igniting in the pit of my stomach. But trust was a dangerous game. Was it real, or just another cruel trick? I glanced at Mary. She deserved more than this. But what could I do? The risk of believing was daunting. The shadows loomed larger, and I was left standing on the precipice of a decision that could alter our fates forever. What awaited us on the other side? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The next morning broke with a dull throb of uncertainty, the sun peeking through the grime-caked windows like a reluctant witness to our suffering. I sat on the edge of my makeshift bed, the thin mattress barely lifting my weight, and turned the letter over in my mind. Was it foolish to cling to a thread of hope when each passing day felt like a slow march to oblivion? My hand trembled as it brushed against the roughness of the floor. Somewhere beneath it, the words of the letter lay like a hidden treasure, waiting for someone brave enough to claim it. As I trudged to the factory, a numbness settled over me. Yet, in the creases of my despair, there were whispers of kindness. An older man, Mr. Thompson, whose hands were gnarled like the roots of an ancient tree, would sneak me a small piece of fruit on occasion, a glimmer of humanity buried under the crushing reality of our lives. His wrinkled face lit up with a knowing smile whenever I accepted, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like we were sharing a secret. "Keep your strength up, lad," he murmured one day, handing me a bruised apple behind the machine's incessant clatter. "You never know when you'll need a spark." His words resonated in me. Small kindnesses sprouted amidst the darkness, like wildflowers in a cracked sidewalk. That I glanced at Mary. Her small frame was barely visible among the towering machines, but even in her weariness, there was a resilience about her. That night, as we sat together sharing half a loaf of bread, I wrestled with my conscience. My eyes scanned the dim room, noting the others hunched over their meager meals, their faces etched with lines of fatigue and desperation. Would the promise of escape be worth turning our backs on this fragile community? On that night, after another backbreaking day, I made up my mind. I approached Mary, my heart racing faster than the pulsing machines that dominated our lives. "I found something," I whispered, drawing her closer under the flickering light of a soot-covered lamp. Her wide eyes shimmered with curiosity, a flicker of her former spirit emerging. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like a bird afraid of being heard. "It's a letter. It speaks of a way out of new beginnings," I replied, albeit cautiously. Suddenly, the visions of what could be began to collide with the reality of our situation. I could not drag her into something uncertain, could not risk her safety on a gamble. Yet the very thought of being complicit in her continuous toil was unbearable. "That I want to hear it," she urged, fiercely determined. The gleam in her eyes rekindled something deep within me, a sense of shared dreams, forgotten hopes. We exchanged the details of the letter, each word weaving a tapestry of possibility amidst the unyielding darkness. The following day, a sense of urgency thrummed beneath the surface. The factory felt heavier, the air more oppressive than usual. Whispers of discontent fluttered through the rumors of impending layoffs, and visible fear hung thick like fog. As the shifts passed and the sun dipped low, a new announcement echoed through the factory: management would hold a meeting. Tension simmered as we gathered, everybody exchanging furtive glances. My heart raced. Would they address the layoffs? Or was something else brewing in the depths of discontent? But just as the silence reached a fever pitch, a sharp scream cut through the factory floor, followed by a chaotic clatter. I whirled around to see a figure sprawled on the ground. Mr. Thompson lay motionless, crumpled, his gnarled hands resting eerily still beside him. The weight of reality crashed down around us, smothering the flicker of hope we had shared. I felt the blood drain from my face, and for the first time, the crushing inevitability of our lives paralyzed me. Would this be our fate too? Would desperation swallow us whole before we could ever find a way to break free? As I knelt beside Mr. Thompson, clutching his lifeless hand, my heart thundered with a new kind of urgency. The dream of escape surged within me, but now it twisted painfully against the backdrop of a life threatened by despair. I could make my move, but at what cost? Could I stand to lose everything Gevrion ID fought for? In that moment, the path forward blurred, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Would I lead Mary and others into the unknown, or would fear cling to us, binding us tighter than the chains we already wore? I looked around at my co-workers, their eyes reflecting a shared desperation, and I realized there was no going back. If I had any hope of rescue, it was now or never. With trembling hands, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down, ready to break me like a fragile thread pulled too tight. For the first time, I truly understood the power of connection when the world around us threatened to unravel. But just as the gravity of my choice settled in, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to find Mary, her small hand bolstering my resolve. "We can do this," she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce, reminding me that hope could rise even from the depths of despair. And before I could respond, we heard the sound of marching feet approaching. Turning toward the doorway, we held our breath. The shadows were shifting yet again, and whatever was about to happen would change everything. The air hung heavy with anticipation as the march of footsteps grew louder, the sound echoing against the factory walls like thunderclouds gathering for a storm. A knot twisted in my stomach. I feared what awaited us on the other side of that door. Even Mary, who had always seemed to find reassurance in the midst of chaos, now looked pale, her faith wavering like a flickering flame. The door swung open, revealing a cadre of men in dark suits, their faces locked in stern expressions that could freeze fire. Fear rippled through the gathered workers as they strode onto the factory floor, symbols of authority armed with the power to change our fates. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm. I wanted to flee, to hide among the shadows, yet the weight of Mr. Thompson's lifeless form anchored me in place. "Listen up," one of the men bellowed, silencing the room with a single command. "We're here to discuss productivity and evaluate the performance of our workers. There have been complaints regarding the output from this section." The words hung in the air like a noose, tightening around our throats. My mind raced as I exchanged glances with the others, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Would they cast us aside like scraps, deeming us unworthy of their precious dollars? As they began to speak of quotas and expectations, my thoughts drifted back to Mary. Her eyes held the spirit of rebellion, yet I feared for what was to come, knowing that every hour we toiled seemed to wear her down. The clock ticked away, weightier than it had before, each second a reminder that our lives hinged on others' whims. Then, the man turned his gaze toward me, his scrutiny a spotlight lingering far too long. "You there, you don't look like you're pulling your weight. What's your name?" "Samuel," I managed to stammer, my throat dry as straw. "To try my best, sir." "Your best isn't good enough." He shot back, the disdain in his voice a dagger plunging into my heart. "We expect more from you. A man like you should produce twice as much. Consider this a warning." His words sliced through the room, and an unsettling murmuration rose amongst the workers. Anger ignited in my chest, and I felt the warm glow of defiance swirling within me. Yet still, fear wrapped around my words, choking the flame. I didn't want to endanger the fragile solidarity woven through our community. Just then, Mary's voice broke through the tension. "If we work harder, it still won't matter, will it?" she challenged, her courage kindling a spark in my heart. "You'll just ask for more and cast us aside when you don't get what you want." Gasps swept through the crowd. I could see in their eyes the desperation mingled with a flicker of hope. Mary's words struck a chord. Perhaps she understood that we were more than cogs in a machine. We had lives, dreams, and dignity that didn't fit neatly into quotas. The man's brow furrowed, and for a moment, I thought he might retaliate, but instead, he straightened his posture, an almost imperceptible shift as he took a step back. "You think you have a say here?" he sneered, his voice taut with scorn. "Well, see how much you and your friends have to say after the pay cuts begin." The collective gasp that followed echoed in the hollow emptiness that began to settle in our hearts. My blood ran cold, the threat of losing a day's worth of pennies paralyzed me. The mere thought of the remaining threads of our existence unraveling caused me to shudder. As the men retreated, leaving discontent and fear in their wake, a surreal silence cloaked the factory floor. Mary turned to me, her expression a mixture of dismay and determination, and just like that, the fragile thread connecting our dreams to reality began to fray before my eyes. That night, as darkness wrapped itself around our home, I lay awake, my thoughts tangled in the scalding uncertainty. The walls felt closer, the shadows more suffocating, and a sense of impending loss rippled through me, igniting a tumult of emotion. Could I truly lead Mary and the others into the unknown? Would I dare to make a stand against the oppressive weight of the factory bosses? The sound of soft crying reached my ears, and I turned to see Mary hunched over against the wall, her shoulders heaving. "I'm so scared," she whispered, the vulnerability in her voice cutting through my own turmoil. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her we would find a way, yet the truth felt like a chain binding my tongue. Instead, I moved closer, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. "Well, figure this out together," I murmured, though even I wasn't convinced. But in that moment, as our breaths mingled in the darkness, a flicker of resolve ignited between us. It was in the softness of our shared struggle that we began to cultivate a spirit of rebellion against the indifference that had overshadowed our lives. Even amidst the despair, the seeds of connection and hope blossomed, and just as I felt a small sense of peace, the creaking of floorboards interrupted the silence. My heart quickened, and I sat up straight. The door creaked open, revealing a shadowy figure, a stranger standing in the threshold, unsure yet resolute. My breath caught in my throat. Who could this be? "Can I come in?" the figure asked, voice trembling yet determined. Hope and apprehension collided within me as I gestured for them to enter, unaware of the secrets they carried, secrets that would irrevocably shift the weight of our choices and entwine our fates further into the struggle we were on the precipice of embracing. The figure stepped into the room, and the sliver of moonlight illuminated a weathered face framed by untamed hair. The stranger looked to be in their 50s, bearing a world of weariness in their eyes, yet the fire inside flickered fiercely. "My name is Thomas," they said, voice steadying as they glanced at Mary and me. "I've come from the nearby factory. They're planning something that you all need to know about." Suspicion danced in the air, but my curiosity overwhelmed it. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "They're not just looking to cut wages, Thomas replied, taking a careful step forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. There's talk of layoffs, bigger changes that will affect both your jobs and your families. If you stand against them now, you may be able to prevent it. But trust me, they don't want you to band together. I exchanged glances with Mary, her eyes wide with fear and intrigue. How do you know this? She pressed, her voice a mixture of disbelief and longing for hope. Thomas ran a hand wearily through his hair, revealing scars and callous marks of labor that mirrored our own. I've been through this fight before, years ago. And I watched as whispers turned into shouts, as hands shaking in unity raised against greed. But if we're too late, if we let them divide us, we'll lose everything. They're counting on your silence. The urgency in his words ignited a fire within me, echoing Mary's defiance from the factory. What can we do? I asked, my voice rising slightly as hope dared to surface through the mounting dread in my chest. Thomas took a breath, a spark of resolve igniting in his eyes. We must gather everyone, workers from different factories, miners, families who are suffering. There's strength in numbers, and if you can gather the courage to speak out, you'll be amazed by the power you wield together. As he spoke, I felt the thread of fear entwined with exhilaration. The crushing weight of our lives suddenly felt lighter at the thought of standing together. But doubt loomed like a thundercloud. What if we failed? What if we lost everything? Who will listen to us? I murmured, my voice tinged with uncertainty. We're just laborers. Thomas shook his head, his expression resolute. You're not just anything. You are the very backbone of this city, the ones who keep it alive. Show them your strength. Help them see that unity is more powerful than their indifference. Mary's hand found mine, squeezing tightly as if drawing strength from my presence. If we do this, we have to stick together. We can't let fear divide us, she said, her voice a steadying force. But how do we even start? I asked, the enormity of the task weighing heavily on my heart. Thomas took a moment, his brow furrowing in thought before his eyes lit up with an idea. There's a town hall meeting tomorrow evening. Many will gather to discuss the changes they claim are needed for efficiency. It's the perfect opportunity. You can rally support there. The idea settled in the air like a shifting tide, rushing toward hope yet brimming with uncertainty. As the weight of determination filled the room, I felt an electric charge coursing through me. We weren't alone anymore, we had a chance to take a stand, but just as I began to believe it, the unexpected creak of the floorboards caught my attention once more. The door swung open, revealing the shadowy outline of another figure, someone from the factory, and I could see panic in their eyes. Samuel. Mary. You have to hide. They exclaimed, fear etched across their features. They're coming. The boss is there looking for you. A rush of adrenaline coursed through me as my heart began to pound louder than the footsteps echoing outside. We can't hide. We need to take a stand. I shouted, desperation stealing my words. Mary's grip tightened on my hand, and we shared a look that held both confusion and determination. Would this be the moment that defined us, or would we succumb to the very fear we sought to cast off? The footsteps drew closer, and I felt the fragile structure of our resolve trembling beneath the weight of looming consequences. In that instant, I knew we stood at a precipice, teetering between hope for change and the painful reality of repression. Thomas stepped toward the door, igniting a spark of bravery that flickered mysteriously within me. We can't retreat now. We stand together, or we fall alone. This is our moment. His voice rang fierce, but the fear in my chest echoed louder, and then, just before the door burst open, another sound pierced the tension, a loud boom, echoing from somewhere deeper in the factory, sending tremors through the very ground beneath us. It was a reminder of the dangers that loomed not only from our oppressors but from the very industry we toiled in. As the door flew open, we were faced with a confrontation that could either ignite our struggle or extinguish it violently. I stepped forward, feeling a rush of determination, yet the anxiety coiling within me held fast. In that breathless moment, I realized that everything I held dear was on the line. Would we harness our courage in the shadow of fear? Would Thomas's words rally us together or scatter us into the darkness? My heart raced as the threshold of our destiny cracked wide open, revealing the decision of a lifetime poised at our fingertips. The weight of the uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest as the door swung open, revealing the harsh light of the factory beyond. My heart sunk as I faced the dark silhouettes of the bosses, their presence a suffocating omnipresence that wrapped around us like a vice. Thomas stepped protectively in front of Mary and me, his voice steady despite the chaos brewing. "We need to gather the others. They might be here to silence us, but they can't break our resolve," he whispered fiercely, his eyes darting toward the door as the figures hesitated at the threshold. "Get out," one of the bosses spat, his sneer cutting through the air. "You think you can rally your pitiful selves and make a difference? You're dreaming." That I felt Mary's fingers tighten around mine, her warmth an anchor in the storm. "Don't listen to them," she murmured, her voice a barely audible whisper filled with unyielding belief. "We have to show them that we can't be silenced." The charge of our determination flickered in the room, but doubt crept in as I glanced at the faces staring back at us. We hardly resembled a battalion ready for war, we were just tired souls, hoping to claim a piece of what should have been ours. "Don't think just because we're workers we're weaker," Thomas said, putting his hands on the shoulders of the person who had rushed in, a young delegate from another factory. James, I remembered. His wide eyes were glossed with fear. "Accuse us of trespassing, but remember, we're the ones holding up this city. Without us, they struggle too." James swayed with uncertainty, his gaze flickering between the bosses outside and our small group. "If we leave now, they'll come for us. They already know our faces," he whispered urgently, as the shadows beyond the doorway loomed closer. I felt the atmosphere change in an instant, a cold wave crashing over me with the realization that taking a stand sported its own grave dangers. "Then we prepare for them. For our families," I said, voice rising as my spirit ignited. "We have to be ready to fight back, to be louder than ever. If we let them see us retreat, they'll know they hold the power." As the leaders discussed our fate in hushed voices, I caught sight of Thomas's hardened expression, mirroring the resolve that had grown within me. "You're right," he said, a whisper of pride imbued in his tone. "You're more than just workers, you are mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. You have an army behind you. Let us disrupt their complacency." Before the bosses could speak again, Mary took a step forward, her voice crystal clear in the charged air. Together, she stated firmly as she mustered all her bravery, "We will not hide. We're more than their instruments of labor, we're the blood and bones of this city. We deserve to be heard." The force of her words vibrated across the room, igniting whispers among our group, firing the kindling of hope. It was the spark we desperately needed, a flicker in the dark, but as we stood there, emboldened by a growing sense of triumph, the ground beneath us trembled again. Only this time, it wasn't just our resolve that shook. A muffled rumble emanated from deep within the factory walls, a visceral reminder of our surroundings, churning with force and rage. The sudden boom echoed ominously, freezing us in place as the boss' eyes darted nervously toward the sound. Then, unexpectedly, chaos erupted from the back of the factory, machinery rattled unnaturally, flaming debris surged through an opening, and the acrid stench of smoke filled the air. "Fire! Fire!" Someone screamed, panic igniting an inferno of fear among us. The gathering clouds of smoke enveloped us, shifting from possibility to despair, and I felt my heart seize tightly. A new dilemma clawed at our throats, forcing us to choose between standing our ground or fleeing into the suffocating darkness. My instincts warned me to turn and run, but as I glanced at Mary, trembling yet steadfast, something shifted within me. I couldn't abandon this fight. Not when we had begun to grasp what it meant to stand together. "We have to go," James shouted, his voice laced with fear, urging us toward the door. "No. This is our moment." I shouted back, more to convince myself than anyone else. "We can use this. The fire, it's chaos, but it also brings attention. We can't let this moment go to waste." Mary's eyes met mine, and I saw the wavering strength shine through, illuminating a path forward. "Samuel, we can't let them silence us now," she whispered urgently. "Well, rise from this," but as we edged cautiously toward the door, smoke coiling around us like a living beast, another sound emerged from the pandemonium, a low moaning, a familiar voice calling from the depths. "Samuel." "Mary," my pulse quickened at the sound, and I locked eyes with Thomas, his face pale with realization. "It's Derek," he breathed, panic rippling through the air. "He's still inside." A surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins, and at that moment, as the factory threatened to swallow us whole, I knew that our fight had transformed into a race against time. Would we leap into the inferno to save a friend, or would we flee for our lives, leaving our fellow workers trapped in the flames of desolation? Smoke swirled around us as I felt the weight of the decision pressing down, heavy and leaden. My heart raced at the howls of fire and the desperate cries of my friend. The embers flew in urgent bursts, lighting the interior with a hellish glow that felt impossibly loud and deafening all at once. Fear gnawed at the edges of my resolve, but deep within, I could feel a flicker of courage fighting against the dread Derek. I shouted, my voice cracking, barely penetrating the cacophony. "Where are you?" "I'm here," came the anguished reply, muffled, but undeniably his. He must have been trapped somewhere, perhaps under debris, or worse, caught until the flames claimed him. My mind raced. If only I could see through the thick veil of smoke, if only there was a way to reach him without succumbing to the growing heat. "Samuel." "Mary." They were his last yells, choking on the smoldering air, a ghost of fear that blasted through me and tied my insides into knots as if setting aflame the doubt that had just begun to extinguish. Mary's grip on my arm tightened, her eyes wide and pleading. "We can't leave him," she insisted, her voice cutting through the rising panic with undeniable clarity. "But the fire, we can't do this without him," she countered, the fierceness in her eyes urging me to awaken to our shared belief. "He needs us. We need him. Remember what we said? We're stronger together, and what's the point of this moment if we don't take action?" The chaos felt anchored within the weight of her words. I searched her gaze, licking my dry lips, desperately wanting to believe in a way forward, not just for ourselves, but for all of us who carried each other's burdens. "James," I turned to him, "stay with Mary. I'll find Derek." I didn't wait for his protest. I plunged toward the source of Derek's weak, agonizing calls, my lungs clawing through the acrid smoke, each step seemingly more painful than the last. The air thickened around me, and my vision teetered on the brink of blindness as the flames danced like hungry spirits. I could barely catch my breath, each inhalation a gasping reminder of the danger closing in. "Derek! Can you hear me?" I shouted into the searing darkness, my voice breaking with frustration. "Over here." His voice punctured the madness like a lifeline, though it sounded more like a whisper against the raging inferno. I stumbled further inside, my heart pounding in synchrony with the suffocating tension, and there he was, huddled in a corner, a charred piece of metal pinned across his legs, limbs splayed awkwardly, and a sheen of sweat reflecting the flickering flames around him. "Samuel!" he cried, his face ghostly pale. I rushed to him, desperate to maneuver the heavy debris, but it wouldn't budge. "We had to find you," I panted, fighting against the panic clawing its way up my throat. "We're going to get you out. Just hold on, we're trapped." "No. We're not," I replied, folding my body against the heat. "You need to push, Derek, on 3. 1 to 3, with every ounce of strength, we shoved together, and I felt the weight slowly give way. Just as I thought we could escape, a loud groan resonated through the structure. The walls shuddered, dust raining down like a bizarre marker of what was to come. We weren't just trapped by the debris, the factory itself threatened to vanish into itself. Behind us, I heard gasps, my heart sank, knowing that James and Mary were still close, watching, waiting. They would not abandon us. "Come on, Derek. I've got you," I yelled as we hurled our bodies towards freedom. His legs slid free, and relief flooded over me, a brief moment to breathe before another tremor pushed us towards further chaos. In that instant, time warped. The inferno roared louder, drowning out our fears. I sprang towards the exit, clutching Derek's wrist, but the flames crackled closer, encircling us with opportunistic menace. I glimpsed Mary and James' wide eyes as they steadied themselves against the falling debris. "Move!" I shouted, adrenaline flooding every vein. This way, we barreled forward through the billowing smoke, struggling against the grips of despair. Would we make it? Were we truly escaping, or were we running to meet our doom? Just as we reached the doorway, my heart leapt into my throat. The beams above us creaked ominously. "No!" Mary shrieked, her voice piercing through the chaos as the ceiling began to buckle. I turned just in time to see a large beam detach and crash down between us, blocking our passage. The panic-stricken look on Mary's face mirrored my own horror at the reality we faced. "Samuel!" Derek gasped, the color draining from his face, as I felt the world shift beneath us, time moving far too slowly. In that suspended moment of terror, it struck me a realization that tore through the haze like a lightning bolt of clarity. We were not just fighting for survival, we were fighting for each other. But would the flame-fueled uncertainty consume our fear, or would it unite us in a collective strength so profound that it could withstand anything? The answer loomed larger than life, and as fear gripped my heart tightly, I knew our story was far from over. Would choice become our salvation, or would it be the architect of our downfall? As the dust settled, another roar came, more than just fire. A cry for justice echoed through the chaos, and reality twisted in on itself, leaving us teetering on the edge of hope and despair. "Samuel, now!" Mary yelled, the urgency snapping me back into the fight. "Go. I'll find another way," I shouted, feeling the weight of collective hope behind meth belief that our struggle would ripple through the chaos like wildfire. I couldn't let fear claim us. But as I turned to race back into the smoke, a shocking revelation struck me. An old, rusted factory file containing hidden agreements and secrets lay exposed on the ground, pages flaring, pictures obscured. What could it conceal? And who could it save? The minutes slipped between my fingers like grains of sand. The truth, buried in the ashes, now beckoned to me. Behind me, a gasp echoed, and I turned back towards Mary, caught in the grips of the fire and uncertainty, the reality of the choices we were all forced to make settling unervingly among us. Would I piece together the puzzle in time to save everything we had fought for, or would we all burn in the truth we had yet to uncover? As the flames continued to roar behind me, illuminating the world in a dance of orange and shadow, I felt the tug of the dilapidated file beneath my fingers. I hesitated, glancing back at Mary and James, their faces marked with desperation. The crackling noise of the inferno seemed to mock my indecision, urging me forward while the drawn veil of flames painted a picture of the chaos that awaited me. "Derek!" I shouted, straining to keep my voice steady. "Stay close to Mary." "Where are you going, Sam?" His voice trembled, fear mingling with confusion. "I need to find out what this is," I yelled, pointing with urgency to the file that begged for attention. It could expose everything. It could connect the dots. "No!" Mary's cry rang out, sharp and desperate. "We can't lose anyone else. We're already running out of time." Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back, grasp their hands, and flee the engulfing chaos. But the flickering possibility of revelations that lay within my grasp acted as both a light and a weight to my heart. I thought of the countless workers underpaid, overworked who had toiled away in cruel conditions while the world outside lived in comfort. Somehow, this file felt like a lifeline not just for us, but for them, the voiceless who had been trampled by history. "I'll be right back," I promised, my resolve solidifying for a brief moment. Behind me, I could see Mary ready to leap, her bravery almost contagious, but I had to quell any urge to reach back and pull her the way I'd want to for Derek. The cost of this choice shimmered in front of me, and I had to take it or risk it all being lost. With barely a glance back, I dove into the smoke, the air thickening with heat. As I stumbled further into the remnants of the factory, I could feel the desperation hanging in the air, mingling with the pungent scent of sweat and fear. Each labored breath sent my heart racing, the heaviness of my mission weighing heavy on my shoulders as I fought against the winds of chaos around me. The file slipped from my fingers and tumbled open, revealing scraps of information barely discernible through the haze. Unfamiliar names known only to whispers took shape: labor organizers, a clandestine meeting, and a promised uprising. I crouched low, desperate to understand. Dozens of thoughts flared in the shadows of urgency, and I struggled to piece them together. This wasn't just a collection of papers, it was a history of exploitation, the legacy of pain etched into the fragile pages, each letter a testament to the struggles endured. As I scanned the document, heart pounding like the beating of a war drum, a single phrase screamed at me, a cruel recognition pinching at my tenacity: investors from the East Coast, willing to silence the voice of the workers. That if this were to fall into the wrong hands, if we were to fail, it wouldn't just cost us our lives, it would extinguish the flicker of hope for everyone else still fighting for what was right. A chill ran through me. But just as that darkness loomed, a spark of clarity ignited within. This wasn't merely our story, it was a call to arms for the voiceless. That I clutched the file tightly and prepared to return, steeling myself against my limits, when the ground shuddered violently beneath my feet. The ceiling above me groaned and crumbled, sending plumes of dust and debris falling dangerously close. I realized it was now or never, and the flames were inching ever closer. In a mad rush backward, I barely escaped the collapsing section of the old factory, thrusting myself through the doorway with a heave of desperation. The flames were relentless, licking at my heels as I bolted back to where Mary and James awaited with bated breaths, their faces pale like specters against the backdrop of fire. "Sam." Mary's voice cut through the chaos, relief crashing over her panic. "You came back, I found something." I panted, the file cradled against my chest like a fragile secret. I glanced at Derek, his eyes wide and pleading. "But we need to get out now." Before I could step closer, a deafening crack echoed, and it shattered the words. Lodged in my throat. A massive beam broke loose, falling towards Mary, her eyes widening as she cried out, pure terror radiating from her gaze. I rushed forth instinctively, but time seemed to stretch in that agonizing moment. The world around us blurred, the fire highlighting the choice laid bare before me once more. In a heartbeat, I lunged toward her, ready to shield her at all costs. Yet, as I reached out, the sensation of contact short-circuited my own resolve. The falling beam collided with the ground mere feet away, landing with a violent crash that sent shards of wood and fire scattering. The impact sent pain lancing through my leg, and a scream tore from my throat. "Samuel!" Derek called, trying to aid me, but the chaotic bursts of heat and debris nearly swallowed us whole. As agony bloomed, I remembered the file, the truth that could fracture and expose an unjust system. This was not just about our survival. It was about the survival of countless others, but with Mary caught in the shadows of the flames, the precarious brink between hope and despair loomed ever larger. I gazed into her eyes, waiting for the right moment, knowing my next choice could be the difference between salvation and loss. Suddenly, the ground erupted with a new tremor, and a gasp stilled in my throat, the realization crashing like waves, drowning my resolve. A figure emerged from the darkness behind me, a silhouette I would never forget. "Stop!" he bellowed, his voice cutting through the flames and chaos. "Daniel?" His presence sent a jolt of confusion spiraling through me. What was he doing here? What had he come to take from us? Like a sudden storm, he stood there, encased in shadows, a secret that could unravel our very fabric of hope. Time fractured, revealing once more that truth is often far more dangerous than fiction. The flames roared like demons unleashed as I stood, frozen, my heart racing against the reality of Daniel's return. His familiar face appeared all too menacing in the hazy orange glow, a twisted reminder of the world we sought to escape. Anger surged through me, battling with confusion, as memories of our past, once filled with laughter and camaraderie, now felt like chains binding us to the very system we were trying to dismantle. "Sam, we don't have time." Mary's voice broke through the haze of my thoughts, her anxiety palpable. "We need to go, stay back, Mary." I shouted, my voice hoarse but resolute. "This isn't right. He shouldn't be here." Daniel stepped forward, the flames casting shadows across his face, painting his expression with a mix of determination and something darker. I came to help, whether you believe it or not. You have something they want, something I want to protect. You don't know what you're saying. You're the one who turned your back on us. On everything we fought for. My words came out strained, the pain in my leg intensifying, but in that moment, it was nothing compared to the shock of his presence that I had to make a choice, Sam. Anguish flickered in his eyes. We all did. They're watching. They'll come for you, and the file you're holding. His gaze dropped to the papers, the weight of history trapped within those fragile sheets seeming to pulse in the air between us like an impending storm. I clutched it closer, feeling the raw energy trembling against my chest, heightened by Daniel's unexpected re-emergence. Don't you see? It doesn't matter what you think you're protecting. What matters is the truth. I shouted, my heart wild with urgency, but the fire around us roared louder, drowning my voice. Exactly. And that truth can lead to unimaginable consequences. You don't understand. We don't have time for your excuses. There was desperation in Mary's voice, pushing me to act while the flames danced perilously close. We need to decide now. It felt like the ground itself had become a battlefield, ripping apart allegiances I had long held dear. The air was thick with oppression, not just from the smoke surrounding us but from the reality that Daniel had returned to confront us at our moment of vulnerability. Deep within my core, I recognized that choices made now could mean the difference between life and death, not just for us, but for countless others who seemed to live in the shadows of despair we were fighting against. Help us, Daniel. Help us find a way out of here. I could feel the weight of hope shifting, battling against the shadows of my previous trust in him. There was a vulnerable side gleaming like a beacon within him. A part of me secretly longed to reach out and embrace that possibility once again. His gaze softened for a heartbeat, and an unexpected rush of kindness appeared in his expression, almost as if he could still remember the man I once viewed as a brother. Follow me, but you must trust me to find a way out. I can't have you questioning everything I say. Before I could respond, the building shuddered violently again, silence splitting as concrete crumbled above us. Mary grabbed my arm, fear coursing through her as she urged me to make a choice. Sam. What do we do? As I took a deep breath, I caught a glimpse of Derek's fragile face, the fear in his eyes making my resolve tremble. We can't stay here. We have to trust Daniel for now. No. Mary cried desperately. You can't be serious. He could lead us straight into danger. Believe me, this is the only way. I pleaded, glancing from her to Daniel, who stood poised like a figure carved from both bravery and betrayal. The weight of my decision reverberated in the air, heavy yet hopeful. In that defining moment, the ground shook again, erupting with a primal roar as chunks of the ceiling began to fall towards us. Without hesitation, I pushed Mary and Derek forward, yelling at Daniel, "Lead the way." He sprinted ahead as we stumbled after him, weaving through what felt like the mouth of chaos, the heat clawing at our flesh and the air thick with smoke curling around our lungs. But as we dashed through the remnants, an echo caught my attention, a distant knocking sound, persistent and frantic. Against the backdrop of our escape, it was like a heartbeat pulsing against the chaos. A new, inexplicable tension nestled in my gut. Did you hear that? I gasped, but before anyone could respond, a figure emerged from the darkness ahead, silhouetted by flames that flickered wildly around him. Help! Please, you have to help me! His cry wrenched through the noise, filled with desperation. I froze again, the line between survival and sacrifice blurring as I recognized the voice. That? Mary's voice trailed off, horror painted across her features, as recognition washed over me like ice-cold water. And there it was, the flickering possibility of salvation colliding with the undeniable reality of our impending doom, and I was left standing teetering on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. Time and choices hung in the balance like the fragile paper I clutched to my chest, tethering me to a moment that could alter the course of our lives forever. As I stood frozen, adrenaline coursed through my veins with a tumultuous mix of fear and hope, torn between the impending flames and the frantic figure before me. Is that Jack? The name escaped my lips in disbelief, a fragment of the past that felt like a ghost coming back to life among the embers that I can't breathe. Please, help. Jack's voice trembled as he stumbled closer, his features contorted in desperation, revealing the length of suffering that had marred his once bright spirit. His clothes hung on him like rags, and the firelight flickered off his eyes, reflecting a haunting echo of our shared history. Jack. I shouted, but my heart constricted as the fire blazed hotter, and every instinct screamed for self-preservation. No. Mary's hand tightened around my wrist, grounding me in the reality of our situation. We can't stop. If we help him, if we leave him, he'll die. It came out sharper than I intended, raw with emotion. The pounding of my heart was punctuated by the crumbling ceiling above, a reminder that our time was dwindling. The chaotic noise threatened to drown me, but Jack's desperate gaze held me firm. Sam, he's part of the past we're fighting against, Mary urged, her voice shaky but laced with urgency. Don't let nostalgia cloud your judgment. Yet the more my mind churned, the more Jack's wavering figure pulled at something deep within me, an echo of our shared laughter, our collective dreams for a better world. He was one of us, lost among the ruins of a corrupted system we had vowed to dismantle. Please, just help me. Jack stumbled closer, his desperation cutting deeper than the flames threatening to consume us. That I could see the terror dancing in his eyes, a reflection of the fear that had gripped my own heart so many times before, a recognition of what it meant to fight not just for survival but for the humanity that lay buried beneath the weight of oppression. I can't just leave him, Sam, think about what you're doing. Mary's voice trembled as she stepped close, the heat from the flames forcing us to reconsider our course. We risk everything if we stop now, and what about Jack? My voice cracked, the decision weighing heavy on my soul. He deserves a chance. In that fleeting moment, as I reached for him, I grasped the torn fabric of my own memories, the whispers of solidarity from our past, the faces of those who had fought alongside us. The air buzzed with anxiety, and with every fiber of my being, I recognized that this was not solely about rescuing a friend, it was a testament to the very ideals we had fought for. Sam. Daniel's voice sliced through the flames, a commanding presence breaking my reverie. We need to move, now. But as the chaos surged, a new layer of reality washed over me. Jack, if you can hear me, grab my hand. I shouted, my heart thrumming painfully against my ribs. As he staggered forward, a silhouette carved in ash and desperation, I felt a surge of determination course through me. I reached out, fingers almost brushing against his, but before I could close the gap, the ground lurched violently beneath our feet. The ceiling above us groaned ominously, cascading dust and debris in a cloud of despair. No. Mary screamed as I lunged forward, fully aware of the narrow passage of time slipping like sand through my fingers, and then, just as our hands were about to connect, the ceiling collapsed, a cacophony of noise and a shower of rubble falling all around us. I felt the world tumble into disarray, the ground shaking violently, dragging me down into a world of shadows. In the following chaos, I felt something grab onto my ankle, a desperate and familiar grip. My heart soared with hope as I turned to see Jack's hand clinging to me, his face a mask of horror that mirrored my own, but Daniel moved too quickly for my mind to catch up, yanking us away from the danger. We don't have time. He cried, dragging us back. We need to go now, let him go. I shouted, afraid of the price we were about to pay. We can't leave him. Then, out of nowhere, a piercing scream tore through the smoke-laden air, curdling my blood. It was a woman's voice, full of raw anguish. Help me. Please. Another choice loomed before me, and it felt as if the forces of the universe were conspiring to tear the fabric of my soul apart. Two lives, both desperate, both yearning for salvation, hung in the balance of choices made in the heat of a moment, and as the flames roared around us, feeding off our hesitation and fear, I knew whatever choice I made, it would lend weight to our struggle, reaping consequences that could clash against the very foundation of the world we were trying to save. The echoes of humanity haunted me, memories intertwining like threads of a tapestry unraveling before my eyes. With flames threatening to engulf our escape, every ounce of hope and despair crashed together, bursting forth into a moment that could define USA, moment that could seal our fates in ways none of us could foresee. I turned, torn between the cries of the past and the grim insistence of survival, the walls closing in as the chaos pressed down around us, forcing me to confront the stark reality of my choice. And then, another sound echoed, a distant mechanical whirring, deep and ominous, cutting through the chaos, revealing the machinations of a world more terrible than I had ever imagined. It echoed like an omen, foretelling decisions that would take us to the brink of destruction, a countdown to an uncertain future amidst the flames and shadows, the revelation that our battle was only just beginning. The stench of smoke enveloped me as the chaos around us raged on, swirling shadows and searing heat closing in with earth-shattering intensity. My heart pounded not just with the adrenaline of escape but with the crushing weight of the decisions lingering like fractured glass in the air. For a moment, everything slowed, each pulse of my heart reminding me of the lives precariously hanging in the balance. Samuel. Please. Jack's voice cut through the haze, desperate and raw, pleading with a sense of urgency that reached deep into my core, as if every echo pleaded for recognition, for a chance to be saved. I could feel Mary's grip tightening around my wrist as if she too stood on the precipice of this intimate confession, both of us tethered by a shared history that felt both like a lifeline and a shackle. Give me your hand. I reached forward, fighting through my memories, fighting against the consuming flames that felt like shadows turning against the light of hope. Everything around us was collapsing, but my instincts leaned toward Jack, toward the brother I had lost and chosen to distance myself from time and again. But then, another cry rose from the depths of despair, unfamiliar but painfully close. Help! The voice was sharp, slicing through the thickening air. A woman's voice, filled with desperation, and my heart twisted, caught between two fires. Sam. Mary's voice rang out, breaking my focus, but the pull of Jack's desperation remained strong. Don't. We can't save them both. But her words felt like an anchor pulling me down, not for fear of repercussions, but for the weight of empathy that threatened to drown me. Jack staggered closer, eyes sunken, mirroring the anguish of countless lives already lost in these walls of anguish. But would reaching for him mean risking Mary, risking everything we had fought to build? Trust me. Jack gasped, his breath light with smoke, their urgency drowning out the flames that licked at my heels. I took a tentative step closer, fingers trembling against the adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was a moment of truth, a choice between the bonds of the past and the fragile connections of the present. Mary's stare burned with the weight of emotion, but it held an adamant strength. We need to go, Sam. We have to try. Her voice thrummed like a lifeline, anchoring me to the reality we faced. But even as I drew closer to Jack, I couldn't look away from the flames. They danced around us, ever threatening, and I could feel the time slipping fast. Please. I can't breathe. Jack's voice cracked, breaking through the tension that seemed to stretch like a taut line ready to snap. I hesitated, caught in a cycle of choices, as if the answers lay buried beneath years of struggle and sacrifice. Samuel. Mary yelled again, urgency spilling into her voice, but the fire crackling and swirling revealed an unexpected truth. You have to decide, do you remember? Jack gasped, coupling urgency with desperation in his voice. All those summers spent dreaming of a better life? We can still have it. Together. Memories flickered between us like memories illuminating a darkened path. Every fight you ran from, every betrayal sought to divide us, but we could be more. His words kindled something deep within, a flicker of rebellion I had buried beneath the weight of sacrifice, but still, doubt surged within me like smoke filling my lungs. Because while Jack was part of a past I didn't want to forget, the present was tearing at the seams. I couldn't let my heart drown in the sorrow of nostalgia. So I reached for him tentatively at first, the leap between past and present narrowing as the stakes grew far too high. Suddenly, the futility of our scenario shattered like glass beneath the grip of flames. The factory moaned once again, tearing at its own foundations, a cruel reminder that we had only moments left. Sam. Mary breathed, memories of shared laughter, dreams, and losses lingering in the air as I hesitated, torn between choosing connection or letting go. We have one shot, but my heart was already made. I had chosen. I won't leave you behind. I yelled, extending My hand towards Jack, but just as the distance folded in, darkness erupted from the distance, another barrier, another threat pulling Jack deeper into the shadows. Run! I urged Mary, with the resounding echoes of despair molasses thick on my tongue, but only the fire answered back, and I felt the weight of our past engulfing me whole. In that heart-stopping moment, Jack lunged forward, fingers barely brushing against mine before time wrenched us apart. The flames surged higher, wrapping around our hopes, and I turned, gasping for breath, overwhelmed by the vacuum of choices made. Samuel. I heard Mary's voice drift through the chaos, but as tears streaked down my face, I couldn't drown in despair. I had to keep moving. Together, we pushed ahead. We had to embrace what lay beyond, no matter our losses. Behind me, Jack's cries faded into the symphony of destruction, and though I couldn't save him, I would carry his memory ravenous beneath my skin. He was part of the legacy we had all carved into this earth. Emerging into the cool air, gasping for breath, we stumbled into the distance beyond, where faces began to come into focus, shadows of concern followed by the fierce light of hope, where countless families awaited news of loved ones caught in the storm. But the realities of the world we faced pressed like a heavy blanket, the weight of loss no amount of sunlight could wash away. We were alive, but as the echoes of our choice reverberated, I felt the burden of what we couldn't change crash down. Our hands intertwined, we had defied the flames, but at what cost? Just as I deemed our escape could lead to redemption, another motion caught my eye, a shadow lurking just outside the flames, a vibrant hope wrestling against despair. Behind that shadow, others gathered their strength, each one bearing their own scars. As sunlight beckoned with the fierce rain of a new dawn, I realized then the fire, the struggle, the choices, they united us in ways we never anticipated or imagined. Jack's sacrifices intertwined with our journey towards change, igniting spirits anew as we stumbled forth together, forged into a fierce collective, and standing beneath the vibrant horizon, I felt the weight of that collective history pressing into my bones, calloused hands joining together in solidarity. Perhaps we hadn't just escaped, we were becoming more than survivors. We were the architects of fate itself, bound together, a force unyielding against the inadequacy of oppression. With the night fading behind us, and threads of dawn breaking into brilliance, it struck me deep within my heart. I felt the tremors of hope resonate powerfully. I turned to Mary, holding her gaze as we stepped forth into the light, and we both echoed soft words that ignited our purpose deeper still. For every soul that burned but never forgot, the struggle is not lost. Together, we rise, together, we fight. And as we faced the world ahead, would remember the flame that sought to consume could only forge a fiercer light to rise.